Welcome to week number 2 of Oak Island Parks and Recreation Department's Fish Talk. I'm Captain Jerry Dilsaver, and I'll be with you for a few minutes today, hoping to give you a tip or two about how to catch some fish in our waters here around Oak Island. We open this up on Fridays, and you have a chance to post your questions, and we look at them Monday and Tuesday and try to get the right answer and come back and we'll post a new thing every Wednesday. Now, our biggest question this week was, what kind of lures can I throw in the surf this time of year? Well, Oak Island, unfortunately, is not the North Carolina Outer Banks. We don't have the best surf fishing in the world, although it can be really good at times. We're in a situation right now, first week of May, where the water is warming, but it's not hot yet. So we've only got a few fish in the surf. We've got some whiting and some pompano and some puffers or blowfish that are closer in, that are more bait fish, and Ian covered them last week. Then we've got a few trout, a few red drum. There might be a few flounder there too, but that season isn't open yet. If you get your flounder, you got to let him go. But they're in the closer part, and then further out, well beyond the breakers, we've got some Spanish mackerel and some bluefish. Let's talk about those closer in ones first. Really, if it's a nice, calm day, no waves and whatever, you could take the same soft plastics, be it a grub, be it a curl tail, a paddle tail, shrimp shape, whatever you use for trout and drum back in the creeks, and go throw it in the surf. You're not going to be able to cast extremely far with that tackle, but many times those guys are in the first 10 or 15 feet off the beach. Just fish it real slow, because the waves are going to be bouncing around. It's going to have plenty of action, even on those days that look calm. Now, when you want to get further out for those guys, you need to go a little heavier, and you need to be a little more specialized in rod and reel. We go to a little bit heavier bait. That grub that you fish back in the creek, you're probably using a 1/4 ounce jig head on. Well, this is a flash foil paddle tail that is 7/8 of an ounce. It's got some weight. You're even going to have to use a little heavier rod to get the best out of it. But with a little heavier rod and the little heavier lure, you can cast it twice as far. So if you cast it twice as far, you can fish it twice as far back. Now, it's a little bit of a, I hate to call it a special setup, but you just need to do it right. You're going to need a longer rod. This is one I use. It's 8.5 feet. It's got a little stiffer tip so that I can load this tip with this 7/8 ounce, and I'm going to show you some 1.5 ounce stuff in a minute to help get that distance. I use a smaller reel so I don't have a big coil coming in and hitting this first guide to slow the cast down, and I run a super braid line on the reel. But on top of that, I use just enough to go from the lure all the way through all the guides and wrap just a couple of times around here. And I use a mono there, and I use heavier. I'm fishing 20-pound on my yellow line here. You can see that's the braid, and the leader is 30-pound. The leader takes all the abuse of casting, because to get the distance, you're really gonna whip this. So that's my setup to get a little bit extra. And one thing you always do when you're using a lure like this is tie it on with a loop knot. That lets the lure work the best it will. So that's your way for trout and drum and flounder. And those flounder you can keep August the 16th till the end of September. So understand that if it works for them now, you'll probably catch them then too. The Spanish and bluefish rarely come up close. They're behind the breakers, so you need to get to them. The easiest way to get to them is these metal jigs, and there are different sizes. They start at 5/8 of an ounce. There are a lot of ounces, and they go up to 1.5 ounces. The 1.5 ounces on this setup, set up the same way, is going to give you the longest cast. It's going to get out there to them. Now with them, you're going to move it quick. With these soft plastics, you just ease it back across the bottom and bounce it. When you're throwing metal, you cast, you flip that bail, and as soon as you come tight, you're reeling it. Maybe even jerking a few times to make it dart. But these guys, the metal, and the thinner your metal. This is one called a chrome jig, and you can look, it's got a little bit of belly. This is a minnow jig. It's got less belly. And this is a stick jig. It's a little wider and flatter. When you're going for that last foot of cast, the narrower and smaller your jig is in the same weight, it's gonna cast a few feet further. And understand here that our predominant wind is southwest, which is coming straight at you. So you need little stuff that can cut through that and get out. So that's what I suggest fishing in the surf right now. The soft plastics, your normal stuff, maybe on a real calm day and especially around high tide. The bigger soft plastics when you need to reach further or around low tide. And the metal jigs for when you're trying to get further out to the Spanish and bluefish. And speaking of those Spanish and bluefish, they are running up and down the beach right now. If you've got a boat or a kayak, and they're just out beyond the end of the piers. Unfortunately, our piers are not open yet. We are hoping with the state going into phase 1 of reopening Friday that we will see our piers reopen soon. Crossing fingers for the weekend maybe. But once you can get out on those piers with these jigs, you can cast to those Spanish and to the bluefish. And there's also some king mackerel running up and down the beach already. There was one caught last week over at Wrightsville Beach at Johnny Mercer's Pier. There was one caught Monday at Curie Beach Pier, and they usually get here first. Ocean Crest got just a little bit of work to finish up before they can reopen, but they're going to be soon. And Oak Island Pier, Town Council's just waiting to see what the governor has to say before they make the step to reopen it. And that's what I've got for you today, but want to remind you that Friday, a new Fish Talk questionnaire or post is going to go up. It will tell you who is going to be the speaker for next week and give you the opportunity to pose your questions for him. Until then, good fishing.